Magic, white and black, the science of finite and infinite life. A consideration of this will give us the key to an understanding of man's original nature and of the necessity of his fall from grace. We cannot objectively see the light or the truth as long as we are within the body of the one or the other. Only when we go beyond the sphere of the light we can see its luminosity. Only when we fall into error will we learn to appreciate the truth. As long as primordial man was one with the universal power from which he emanated as a spiritual ray or entity in the beginning, he could not know the divine source from which he came. The will and imagination of the universal mind were his own will and imagination. Only when he began to step out of his divine self could he begin to exist as an individual self. Only when he began to act against the law did he begin to realize that there was a law. Man's apparently separated existence from God is an illusion, but this illusion must be experienced by him so as to enable him to outgrow it and to realize his unity with God. A God who does not realize his own divine nature would not be able to enjoy it. When man, as a spiritual entity having attained perfection, enters again into his source, his sense of self and separateness will be lost, but he will be in possession of knowledge. This example is intended to illustrate the fundamental law of creation. The first great cause, so to say, stepping out of itself, becomes its own mirror, and thereby establishes a relation with itself. God sees his face reflected in nature. The universal mind sees itself reflected in the individual mind of man. God comes to relative consciousness in his own nature, but when he again retires into himself, the relation will cease. He will again become one with himself. There will be no more relative consciousness, and Brahma will go to sleep until the new day of creation begins. But man knows that he exists even after all his relation with external things has ceased. He does not need to look continually into a mirror to be reminded of that fact. Likewise, the absolute self-consciousness of the great I Am is independent of the objective existence of nature, and he will still sit on the great white throne after the earth and the heaven fled away from his face, which means that he will rest in his own divine self-consciousness. The superior powers of inner perceptions are those possessed by the inner man, and they become developed after the inner man awakens to self-consciousness. They correspond to the senses of the external man, such as seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, smelling. External sensual perceptions are necessary to see sensual things. The internal sensual perceptions are necessary to see internal things. Physical matter is as invisible to the spiritual sight as astral bodies are to the physical eyes. But as every object in nature has its astral counterpart within the physical form, it may see, hear, feel, taste, and smell with its astral senses those astral objects, and thereby know the attributes of the physical objects as well, or still better than the physical man might have been able to do with his physical senses. But neither the physical nor the astral senses will be able to perceive unless they are permeated by the power of the Spirit which endows them with life. Men usually look upon a thing as real if it is seen alike by several persons, while if only one person professes to see it, it being invisible to others, it is called illusive. But each impression produces a certain state of the mind, and a person perceiving it must be in a condition to enter into a relation with that state which the impression produces. All persons being in the same state of mind and receiving the same impression will perceive the same thing, but if their states of mind differ, their perceptions will differ. A horse or a lion may be seen alike by everyone who has his normal senses developed. But if one is excited by fear, his perception will differ from that of others, because the product of his own imagination distorts the impression received. A drunkard in a state of delirium tremens believes to see worms and snakes crawling over his body. His experience tells him that they have no external existence. Nevertheless, they are realities to him. They really exist for him as the products of his own mental condition, but they do not exist for others who do not share that condition. But if others were to enter the same state, they would see the same things. Our perceptions, therefore, differ, not only in proportion as the impressions coming from the objects of our perception differ, but also according to our capacity to receive such impressions or according to our own mental states. If we could develop a new sense of perception, we would be in a new world. If our capacity to receive impressions were restricted to only one sense, we would only be able to conceive of that which could become manifest to us through that sense. Let us suppose the existence of a being who could enter into only one state of consciousness, for instance, that of hate. Having all his consciousness concentrated into one guiding passion, he could become aware of nothing else but of hate. Such a god of hate, incapable of entering into any other mental state, could perceive no other states but those corresponding with his own. To such a being, the whole world would be dark and void. Our oceans and mountains, our forests and rivers would have no existence for him, but wherever a man or an animal would burn with hate, there would be perhaps a lurid glow perceivable by him through the darkness, which would attract his attention and attract him. And on his approach, that glow would burst into a flame in which the individual from whom it proceeded may be consumed. Any other mental state or passion may serve for a similar illustration. Hate knows hate, and love knows love, and a person full of hate is as incapable to love as a being full of love is incapable to hate. The Bhagavad Gita says, "Those that are born under an evil destiny, having acquired evil tendencies by their conduct in former lives, know not what it is to proceed in virtue or to recede from vice, nor is purity, veracity, or the practice of morality to be found in them. They say the world is without beginning and without end, and without an Ishwar, that all things are conceived in the junction of the senses, and that attraction is the only cause."